Good morning. It is 9 a.m., so I'd like to call to order the June 21st, 2022 City Council meeting. Please call the roll.
Garza.
Here.
Bass.
Here.
Bagwell.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This morning's prayer will be given by City Attorney Paul Brown. Thank you.
Would you join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for providing for our needs daily. You've blessed us as a people and blessed us as a nation. But we pray for your guidance. We pray for your guidance for our leaders at the national, state, and we certainly pray for guidance here for our city council members as they seek to do what's best for the citizens of Hutchinson. Lord, thank you. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Next item, please.
Item 4A, presentation of the 2020 to 2025 action plan update for the Reno County Entrepreneur Ecosystem Partnership.
It's a mouthful. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Is the PowerPoint going to come up? They're just okay.
James Mike's broken too.
Oh, okay. Oh, a lot of people will be happy about that.
Oh, there
There we go.
Okay.
Oh yeah. That's important. There you go.
Test, test. All right, all good. Well, good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm Carrie Mayu, Director of Strategic Initiatives at Hutchinson Community Foundation, and I'm here today on behalf of the Reno County Entrepreneur Ecosystem Partnership, or RCEP, to share progress and updates on our 2020 to 2025 Reno County Entrepreneurship Action Plan. The City of Hutchinson funds this plan primarily through its support of Startup Hutch, as well as the Hutchinson-Reno County Chamber of Commerce and Greater Hutch as a close partner in this work. Dave Dukart with Startup Hutch is here with me in the audience. RCEP began in late 2017 as the Entrepreneurship Task Force and set this vision and mission with the belief that our authentic legacy of innovation and entrepreneurship, the desire to take the future of our community into our own hands, and the necessity to rewrite the narrative of Reno County as a place where we invest in our own people and places amidst the closure of outside-owned corporations like Target and JCPenney. We defined the local economic ecosystem by 5 core parts: mentoring, networking, education, incubation, and funding. We believed that if each part was strong in what it offered to entrepreneurs, we would achieve our vision of an inclusive ecosystem that inspires and supports innovators for a thriving economy. We completed a Strengths and Gaps Assessment, Entrepreneur Survey, and Entrepreneur Town Hall in 2018 that informed the 5-year action plan that has since driven our work and advocacy. One of our key learnings early on was how closely the strength of the ecosystem was tied to the strength of the relationships among ecosystem partners. The ecosystem is interdependent, and it takes all of us and more to make entrepreneurship possible, relying on each other's capacity, knowledge, and resources. A core function of RCEP is to continually strengthen relationships among ecosystem partners as we meet quarterly to assess and evaluate the health of the local entrepreneurial ecosystem on how well it is working to meet the partnership's vision and mission and advocate for needed changes. The action plan centers around 3 core leverage points: collaboration and navigation, strategic communications, and mentoring. To date, our key interventions have been rebranding the Quest Center for Entrepreneurs into Startup Hutch to clarify their role in the ecosystem, advocating for the hiring of an entrepreneur navigator at Startup Hutch as a starting point to spark the entrepreneurial spirit, increase the entrepreneur pipeline, and connect resource partners and entrepreneurs. We've engaged in strategic communications to highlight our community as a friendly and welcoming place to entrepreneurs and innovators. And we've created diverse opportunities for current and potential entrepreneurs to connect, build quality networks, and learn from and alongside one another. It really comes down to people and culture in this work. So our main learnings. In 2021, we repeated our learning process from 2018 to observe how or if the ecosystem had changed since our interventions. One promising finding from the report was the respondents' significant increase in quality of life perceptions of Reno County. This included a 13% increase in overall perceptions of quality of life and a 23% increase in perceptions of economic opportunity in Reno County, suggesting that ongoing efforts from the Chamber and Startup Hutch to celebrate the stories of local entrepreneurs are working to improve the narrative about Hutchinson and Reno County as welcoming places to do business. Small businesses are growing, we found. 67% are expecting to gain headcount in the next 1 to 2 years. 95% expect an increase in sales. 93% expect to expand their facilities. We also saw an increase in entrepreneurs reaching out to Startup Hutch and the Hutchinson-Reno County Chamber of Commerce, a decrease in need for assistance with connecting to other entrepreneurs, and a lower overall level of future assistance needed compared with 2018. We interpret these data points to mean RCEIP's efforts to improve awareness about resources, create opportunities for connections, and navigate resources are working. In addition, we have learned that there are still gaps to address in our ecosystem. Key needs going forward include assistance with marketing and access to venture capital. Marketing remains the top current and future need for entrepreneurs, despite efforts by Startup Hutch and the Chamber to provide learning opportunities. Follow-up conversations with survey participants suggested that there is a need for continuous learning about marketing because technology and trends change so rapidly. Startup Hutch is already planning an innovative marketing skills program that will launch this summer. The increased need for venture capital requires further study, so RCEIP can determine how best to connect local entrepreneurs to the capital they need. This may also suggest that there are sufficient resources available through traditional lending models, and that an exploration of other creative lending models may be worthwhile. And finally, many businesses who currently rent are looking to purchase property, suggesting a continued need for resources to renovate existing buildings or build new commercial spaces for purchase. So as you consider the 2023 budget requests, which I know you've already started doing, remember that your support of Startup Hutch and the Hutch Chamber makes continued progress on this collaborative action plan possible. As we move into the last half of this 5-year action plan, RCEIP is exploring future funding strategies around developing a holistic economic development plan that includes a strong entrepreneur ecosystem as a key strategy for local economic growth. So thank you for your time and interest in RCEIP's work and research. We hope you will take the opportunity to read the full action plan and report that I handed out, and we're happy to answer any questions you have. Aubrey Patterson from Hutchinson Community Foundation also joined me from RCEIP. So we got Dave and Aubrey and myself, if you have any questions.
Carrie, I just had a few comments. First off, thank you for making the time to put this really informative report together. It's really well done. And for the work that the Community Foundation has helped spearhead around entrepreneurship. I feel like Hutch was really on the forefront of this ecosystem work in entrepreneurship, so that's very exciting. So 2 comments. I was wondering if there's any consideration in the work plan for facilitating women and minority-owned businesses, like kind of prioritizing that. I feel like it's a really untapped resource in our community. Mm-hmm. And secondly, when we look at metrics, mm-hmm. I'm wondering if we couldn't set a stretch goal of trying to create median wage earning jobs instead of that. I think the current benchmark is like $15 per hour. Mm-hmm. But just wanted your thoughts on that. I'm clearly not involved, so
mm-hmm. Yeah, good comments. Dave, do you want to talk about the EBB program and the kind of the unlikely entrepreneurs effort?
Hopefully,
come on up.
Okay.
Nice try, Dave, but no, you got to come to the podium.
What can I say? No, the EBB, which is Economic Business Group, we had actually one of the Hutchinson, David.
Sotelo?
Yeah. What is it? Sotelo from the Human Relations Department here at the Chamber, or at the city, actually put that on. He met for 12 weeks. We did have minorities. We had women involved in it. But they actually learned the entrepreneurial spirit. At the end of that particular session, they did have a pitch contest in which the winner was able to take home some additional finance or capital to start their business. So it was a very successful program.
And that's something that you'll be repeating, or?
We'll probably continue to do that in the future.
Okay.
We've also, our metrics or measurements at Startup Hutch, we have been starting to track the different groups that we have actually helped or assistance. We have a group with Network Kansas that talks Capital Multiplier, which is women-owned businesses, and also minority-owned businesses. So we continue to look at that section, and I think in the past we probably have not paid as much attention to that. Although if you look at Startup Hutch, we are probably about 70% women-owned businesses that come in and visit with us that we do counseling with.
Great. Well, you know, as you move forward with your work, we, as the city, as a partner, a funding partner, would love to continue to be a resource. So please lean heavily on Dave Sotelo or whoever's in that human relations role, because I think they can bring a lot of expertise in that particular area.
Thank you. Yes, we're trying to focus more on our partners, and we have continued to increase our partners throughout the county. So
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
thank you.
And just a note on wages, I think that's something we're going to study more in the next couple of years. One of the pain points that has come up in our quarterly meetings when we talk about the bright spots we're seeing in the local ecosystem or the warning signs is this tension between the cost of labor and workforce development, and then also trying to inspire people to start their own businesses. So we're sort of navigating the intersection of all of those things, and I think we'll keep digging into that to see how we can spur quality jobs. It's still entrepreneurship, quality jobs for so singly owned businesses, but also when they hire people, how to help them address cost of labor and hire quality people in their business plans.
I personally think that the $15 an hour is pretty good, considering that when you're an entrepreneur, normally most of the wealth you're building as the business owner, and you normally only have a few people that kind of help in that entry level positions.
Mm-hmm.
So really, I think you should focus on, are we having people that are going to be building generational wealth within becoming a business owner, versus what those entry level positions that are going to be available to people that have entry level skills. So to me, I think it's more of the nature of small businesses that you're not really going to have those abundance of higher paying jobs, because really the wealth is being built by the person that is creating the business. So I just want to throw that out there.
That's a good point. Yeah. Do others on the council have comments or questions about the report? No? Well, again, Carrie, thank you so much for coming today. Really appreciate it. And Dave and Aubrey and Michelle for also representing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 4B, oral communications from the audience.
Okay, this is the part of the meeting where we invite those in the audience to address the council on any issue that is not on the agenda. Please approach the podium, state your name and zip code, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Good morning.
My name is Michael Glenn, and my zip code is 67505. I live in South Hutch.
Okay.
And I decided to come today to this meeting to talk about pedestrians and cyclists in Hutchinson and how we can build upon that community with some few proposals, as well as enacting the master plan that has been in the book since 2014. I want to begin by thanking all of the members of the City Council, officials, the mayor, as well as everyone else who's been involved with the developmentation of the cycling and pedestrian master plan. Some of the routes, the Washington Street Bicycle Boulevard has been going into effect recently, which I and many other cyclists in the area like to see as great, as the city having a priority with cyclists and pedestrians, giving them the right of way on Washington Street. That is a very good step. It also allows people who cannot afford a car or a truck or an automobile that costs tens of thousands of dollars to be able to get around the city safely, conveniently, and without having to like swerve out of their bike lane because a car is hitting them, or to be able to feel safe in the city. And that's a great step that the city council, as the mayor, everyone else has been taking. So I first want to say thank you. There are some proposals that I have thought of and want to bring up to you guys that I think could be a great addition to the cycling community, especially in the Hutchinson area. My first proposal is bike racks. An inexpensive way to increase cycling in general and economic mobility is to install bicycle racks in Hutchinson for the public. Installing them in commercial areas, specifically downtown, increases the chances of people biking to downtown with their bikes and having them stop in local businesses to shop and support small businesses in the area in which they are cycling. People own bikes that are expensive, whether those are electric bikes powered by batteries or just more expensive bikes that you won't find just in a regular bicycle shop. When cycling in commercial areas to get from point A to point B, the bikers are worried about stopping at a store and leaving their bicycle unattended and unlocked. Bike racks would eliminate this fear and would allow residents to safely secure their bike and increase economic output with our local businesses in the area. Another proposal is protecting existing bike lanes in Hutch. Protecting existing bike lanes would increase use of them, as well as protect users of the lanes from getting doored by parked cars and vehicles who illegally swerve into the lane and use it as their own. A simple experiment that could be tested for why we need these protections could be on the Avenue A bicycle lane that's already existing. Something as inexpensive as a common household toilet plunger that could be put on the edges of the barriers of the bike lane and in between the bike lane and the drive lane could show how simple barriers could protect cyclists and others who may use the bike lane, whether those are scooters or skaters or anyone else who can't use the sidewalk or who can't keep up with traffic in the drive lane. And with the toilet plungers, they would be able to show how a barrier could be needed. Let's say we put them down on Monday, and by Friday, almost all of them are knocked down. Those were by automobiles who went too close into the bike lane and could have potentially hit a cyclist or anyone else using the lane. So protective barriers are very inexpensive and a great way to increase the cycling availability in the city of Hutchinson. The final proposal I have is building additional bike lanes. Adding additional protected bike lanes in areas that already have high cycling mobility would encourage even more cycling in the city. Ensuring that these lanes are protected by physical barriers would increase the use of the lanes, as well as increase economic output in the location in which they are built. I once again want to thank everyone involved with the installation of the current network, and the current propositions would enhance the current network and encourage more people to use the network and help with the environment, traffic, and countless benefits of cycling over driving. As someone who personally bikes downtown, I am glad to see proposals brought up by these discussions, and if members of the council have any questions, I will do my best to try to answer them. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael. I was really impressed with your remarks and the fact that you took time to come today. So I think that these proposals are really inexpensive experiments that the city can explore to help improve the quality of life for cyclists. But we do have both major leaders on the recreation and park side here. So I'm going to put Tony and Justin on the spot to talk about the process for identifying additional bike lanes. I know that the city council adopted a complete streets recommendation in our policy several years ago, probably about a decade ago, that did prioritize adding all different types of transportation when we do major reconstruction. But I'm not really sure. Maybe Justin can speak to what the next major bike lane plans are.
I apologize. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. As far as what our next one is, I'm not sure that I have that prepared to deliver. However, we do work very closely with engineering, so when they are going into like reconstruct or a mill and overlay or something like that, we look at how that meshes with the bike and ped plan, and if there's an opportunity there to include some sort of bicycle facility, then we'll have those conversations about getting that project going. So.
And Justin, I'm wondering if the Vitality team helps to inform decisions on where things like bike racks or how does that all mesh together with that community team?
Yeah, that's something that Tony and I have been working towards getting that group a little bit more involved in those discussions. That's a great group of cyclists, primarily cyclists, but we are always trying to drive their focus that direction so they can continue to advocate. They tend to kind of lean more towards events, so we always try to redirect them towards some of these bigger discussions.
Yeah, because when you really look at the system and the infrastructure, that's what's going to drive additional,
correct,
participation. Well, I think these proposals are really great, and if we could plug Michael into that group and that effort, it might produce some added passion in that direction. So I would appreciate that. Okay.
I got a question. In a bike lane, you have to have the street wide enough to add the bike lane to it. Doesn't I don't know if Jeff can answer that.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to have the width of the street to add the lane to it. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
The street has to be able to handle it.
Yeah.
No, you're fine. You're fine. There's a couple of different Jeff Peterson, Director of Engineering. Sorry. There's a couple of different options on some of the lower volume streets, like Washington Street, Bicycle Boulevard. That one actually isn't a separate bike lane or that's being developed, but it's actually where cars and bikes share the same lanes. In some of the higher or the arterial type streets, that width does become something that we need to take into account as we look for those opportunities going forward for bike lanes, or even as we do reconstructs, we look at that a little bit with respect to expanding sidewalks and those types of things too. So there's a whole host of things that go into account on those, but and it's kind of a case-by-case basis as we evaluate those opportunities going forward for bicyclists and pedestrians as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I particularly like the recommendation to explore impermanent barriers on existing bike lanes, because I think that can heighten awareness of on those roads to motorists that this path does exist, and it might be worth exploring with Vitality or Heal or whatever, and some kind of event.
That lends itself to additional discussions going forward with respect to those types of things.
Yeah.
So there is a more of a emphasis on safety, perhaps on some of those locations. So
We've had some pretty unfortunate accidents with cyclists in this community. So I know my husband was an avid cyclist, and after that I was like, nope, we're selling those bikes. no more of that. So it's going to take a lot of work to create a community where people of all different mobilities feel safe. So,
correct.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Michael, do you feel like Avenue A works well with the bike lane on East Avenue A?
I think it's a good start, but like I said, a barrier is definitely needed. So just for a little myself experiment, I biked down Avenue A from Main Street, and I took it all the way down to 4th Street, which is where my friend lives. May as well go see him. There was, I believe, 3 times in which the car was, I would say, uncomfortably close. And in fact, one truck cut me off on what had been Avenue A and Plum. He cut me off out of my own lane, made me forced to brake, and he used the bike lane as the turn lane, which I don't think is that how the street, I don't believe it is.
Well, no.
I feel very unsafe personally, but I don't believe that that the Avenue A lane is correct. I believe it's a very good first step, and I do support it, as we do need more bike lanes in the city. But I don't believe that it's perfect. I believe that a barrier would severely help it and would increase the amount of use in it. But I do believe it's a great first step, because I see cyclists on that bike lane, but a protected barrier would definitely help with that.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and next time we try to do that down Main Street, please show up. I know we talked about that several years ago, and And I was all for it because it would slow down traffic on, cut out a lot of the drag racing and stuff. And it didn't go anywhere. I think the folks on South Main got together. But I appreciate your perspective on Avenue A when we have a major arterial street that we can restripe or redesign, what that might look like and how it can be safe. So thanks, Michael.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Are there
you
any
so
other
much.
questions?
I got one other comment. I live on Cleveland Street, right on A Street. The only problem I see with the bike lane over there, and you can comment to what I'm going to say, is your parked cars. Your parked cars make your bicycle lane closer, does it not, when the parked cars are there? You have to go against the parked cars plus the cars on the other side. Tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I see the parked cars all the way on A Street, and it closes your bike lane. Am I right?
Yes, there are some like oversized cars, vehicles, trucks that when they pull over to parallel park in between, or not in between, on the edge of the curb, which would be to the right of the bike lane if you're going right. On traffic. There are some cities actually switch that. They'll have the drive lane, they'll have the parking lane, and then they'll have the bike lane. They'll have the parking lane that's parallel as the barrier. They will use parked cars as a barrier. Now this has been like New York City, San Francisco, Boston, huge cities, but that could also be implemented in Hutch if that's what council and the mayor would want. Switching the park lane and the bike lane would also have a similar effect to putting barriers up as well. Cars are very good barriers from cars hitting cyclists.
Is there a motion or discussion on the consent agenda?
I would move to approve the consent agenda and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Garza.
Yes.
Faust.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Myers Whitmer.
Yes, I would like to propose that we remove item 6A from the agenda for future discussion.
We'll just defer that to a future meeting, Mayor.
Okay, fantastic. Next item, please.
Item 6B, consider city-county agreement regarding law enforcement matters.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. These are some of the matters that we've had pending for quite a while with the county, and here they are. And I'll tell you in advance, both of these contracts have been previously approved by Reno County. And let's talk about the law enforcement matters first. Much of that contract was obsolete when we redid the law enforcement center and entered into a lease agreement with Reno County for that facility. So all of those provisions were no longer in effect. So we rewrote the remainder of the contract to deal with what was left. Some of the changes that are significant is transportation of prisoners. All municipal prisoners will be transported by the city of Hutchinson. That is a big change from the past and was a kind of a point of contention, but that has now taken place. It's in effect. It has been for several months. Also for mental health facilities that are for individuals that are in the protective custody of the Hutchinson Police Department, the city is responsible for that transportation as well. The percentage that the city pays to the county regarding the Reno County Correctional Facility has been changed. It's been reduced from 14% to 12%. And basically that's to reflect the costs that have come to the city because we have to transport the prisoners. And it's a bit of a compromise. Our estimate for, and we haven't had a full year yet, our estimate for the cost of transportation for a year is about $100,000. Overall, we pay for the jail about a little over $500,000, about $523,000 last year. So if you divide that up by the 14 we're paying, then roughly each percent represents about $38,000. And so as a part of trying to get this contract done and having a little bit of a compromise, we've kind of agreed on a figure of 12%, which represents about $76,000. A little bit of a compromise, but we don't know our exact cost yet for the year, but it is reasonable, and Reno County has approved that. Rather than splitting hairs on that and trying to do partial percentages, because we have our fair share of those with the law enforcement center lease. And quite frankly, it's fair. It's fair for the expenses we're taking on, and it does represent a real reduction in the pay that the city has to make. There is not a joint drug enforcement unit anymore, so those provisions came out of the contract. There is a building shared by law enforcement with the sheriff and the Hutchinson Police Department on East Avenue G for law enforcement purposes. It's impounded cars, evidence areas, that kind of thing. So that's been updated a little bit to reflect the use of that, and that it is owned by the county. That was part of the, as I recall, the old Reno County Public Works facility, part of that. So that was updated as well. Those are the primary changes. It just needed to be updated, and that's basically it. The county has approved it, and I'd ask the city to do the same.
Thank you, Paul. Questions or comments from the council? Well, I would just note that I'm really impressed with the speed at which this came together with open communications with the county. So I commend your work, Gary, on getting this done. I know it's been many months in the making, and you stepped into the middle and negotiated a very fair agreement. So I'm excited to see it move forward. And with that, I would ask for a motion on this item.
I'll make the motion to approve the city-county agreement regarding law enforcement matters and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please call the roll.
Garza,
Yes.
Bass,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho.
Yes, next item, please.
Item 6C, consider city-county emergency communications and radio maintenance contract.
And this is the second of 3 contracts. Now, you're not going to see the third contract on here yet, but there has been a proposed draft submitted to the county for their review, so I expect that to come back not too long. Very, very, very few changes to that last contract. And this one doesn't have a great deal, just some really minor modifications to make it clear that the director of the communications division is a city employee, and they are, and to help clarify the budgeting process. You know, that was there was a problem there, and rightfully so. The county got surprised with a $600,000 bill and over dispatch consoles, and I can understand that you know, we wouldn't want to be surprised with such a bill. So we're clarifying the budgeting process. There, in this contract in particular, there's a board established to deal with the budgeting, and that is being implemented. Chief Hooper is seeing that that's implemented, and it is going to be used. It was already in the contract and should have been followed. It just wasn't. So that is going to happen, and we're going to make sure that happens. We're going to make sure that in the event there are future disputes involving emergency communications, that's where it's handled. That's what it's for. And with the folks that are represented on that board, it will be highly effective. It just didn't occur, and it made things worse. Plus, put in a provision to protect the county. All right, if after the board has established this budget, if the city comes in and passes a higher budget, a higher amount than what they've agreed to, the county's not liable to pay it. So that will put an end to the $600,000 surprises for Reno County. And we are in charge of that budget. And that's not an unreasonable measure because we wouldn't want the same thing to happen to us. Some minor changes about the radio maintenance. We've actually had a radio maintenance service contract for several years now. there was in prior years an actual city radio maintenance employee. And actually, that person got hired away by the company that provides the radio maintenance services. So at that point, we went to the contract and to a contract for those services. And then this contract is being updated to show that it's not a city employee, it's actually the contract, and we share those expenses. And that's basically it on that contract, and the county has approved it. Questions?
Yes, I got a question. What does it cost for our emergency vehicles to be maintained by this service when they go to get repaired? Or work on the radios on the cars and the police in the fire cars. Someone told me it was $200 an hour. I hope that's not true. Is that what we pay these people to work on our vehicles?
Jeff Hooper, Chief of Police. That we have a contract with them, and if it's within the service agreement of the contract, it's substantially cheaper than that. I think it's like $30 an hour, somewhere in that nature. If we ask or request services outside of our contract, which is very rare, that amount goes up. I don't think it's quite $200, but it is substantially more expensive if we're working outside of our contract. But 95% of the work that we need to have done lies within that radio maintenance contract that we have.
So we just pay this portion, and that's it. Anything above that, like you say, then we pay something different, an hourly, right?
Yeah, for example, we have, I'll give you an example. We have, as part of the contract, they will reprogram a radio for us or program a new radio for us. And so if we take a radio down there and need it programmed, the programming is free. They charge us a $4 an hour, which usually takes about 20 minutes to program a radio. So we pay, $15, $20 for that. If we need all of our radios reprogrammed, because of maybe an error, we need reprogramming and everything, and they have to bring an extra tech in to do that in a time frame, then that will cost us extra. But we work really well with them, and so they've been really good with working with us and kind of compromising in those cases too, because we are emergency services and they want to keep our radios up and running. So we've got a good working relationship with that.
So the tech comes to Hutchinson, right, to work
Yes.
on our stuff. Is it out of Wichita?
Well, yes. In fact, because we are such a big player in their business between us and the Sheriff's Department and all services in Reno County, they put a shop in South Hutch.
I see.
And so if we have to run a vehicle in for radio maintenance, we don't have to take it all the way to Wichita. We just run it right down to South Hutch, and they have a tech there for us.
That was my question. I heard it was going all the way to Wichita, but now you just answered it. They moved a facility here in Hutch. That's great. Okay,
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions or comments on this item, or is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the city-county emergency communications and radio maintenance contract and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion and a second on the floor. Is there discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Garza.
Yes.
Faust.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Tyros de Cavallo.
Yes, next item, please.
Item 6D, budget discussions.
Good morning, Gary Meager, interim city manager. Wanted to take the opportunity to talk to you today about the general fund. Just to recap a little bit for the public, we've had a couple of other sessions in which council has reviewed the MRF and the CIP projects and provided input on those. We've reviewed you have reviewed the water sewer rates and provided input for 2023 on those rates, and then looked at the revenue neutral rate for the ad valorem tax, requests for additional employees, funding of outside agencies, and the stormwater fees, and provided that input to us. And that information has been plugged into the information you've been provided for the discussion today. Part of the budget, we wanted to take this opportunity, first of all, to ask you if you've had any questions, if you've had a chance to review that budget. If you have, we thought we'd try to address those. And if there are none, I would ask Angela to kind of walk through the budget to just kind of.
Everyone's okay with the changes we've discussed and the budget as presented. On July 5th, I would come back to you, hopefully with a proposed budget, including all the budgeted funds. And we would also pass a resolution of our intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate. And just a reminder, we're doing that just in case the valuation changes. We're not planning on our mill exceeding the revenue neutral rate. And on July 5th, we would set the revenue neutral rate budget hearing and our normal budget hearing. They would be set on the same date. I would recommend September 6th. It is a normal council meeting, and it meets the requirements of being between August 20th and September 20th. We have to have our revenue neutral rate budget hearing between those dates.
So is that the date that we would approve the budget?
Yes.
Okay, and then for the public's benefit, revenue neutral means that you're not going to pay any more taxes than you paid last year.
Unless your valuation,
evaluation
increased more than average valuation increased.
Okay.
So, yes.
I think the resolution of intent to exceed can be a little confusing to the public, but it's really just a precautionary mechanism in case we misinterpret the evaluation trajectory.
Correct.
Yes, so
In
we
our
might point
case.
out again that at this time, the county clerk gives us an estimate which we work on in building the budget, and that's because people are notified, citizens are notified in May of their valuations. They have a period of time to protest those evaluations. So some of that's going on right now, and so the actual valuation will not come out to us until November 1st. So we're working on an estimate. It could adjust just a little bit, but usually the county clerk's estimates are pretty close.
Great. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No. That's all I had for the timeline. I don't know if anyone has questions about that. No. I think Gary did a good job of recapping what we have discussed so far. So.
Okay, well, I would just ask that the council really take additional time to dive into the budget if you think you're going to have any other questions, because it would be nice.
Oh, is that that all? The discussion?
Yeah.
What's the, okay.
No, Sarah, if you have questions, please launch. I mean, now's the time, so.
Okay. I just had a few questions.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just for the public. I like the answer. What will the fund ending balance be? That's the one we usually talk about in this forum, and just.
Yes.
And our.
Get you.
And I know we had that one spreadsheet that normally, I know we had a column that said like how much it was going to be bonded. It was left blank on my spreadsheet.
Oh,
I
that's
received.
for the CIP.
Uh-huh.
Yes, which
So those
would
are my
affect
two
the
questions.
general fund.
They're separate fund. They're separate questions.
Okay. Yeah, the general fund ending balance is projected to be at $5,355,000. We'll have to subtract $20,000 of that because the Hutch Rec proposal for their healthy neighborhood incentives position was not in this, so it'll be $20,000 less than that is what's projected.
Okay. And then what is our projected bonding?
Our projected bonding. So I did have one change from what was presented. We you approved the Woody Seat design, so we'll likely have to include that in our bonding. So our general fund bonding will be about $6.4 million.
Okay, so it's still in that range that we find acceptable, because isn't usually $6 million is what our target goal is for that?
Yeah,
$6
$6
to
billion
$6.9.
or just above. So
Okay.
we should be fine.
So does that leave our bond and interest mill at like that 10.1?
We would take that reduction to be at the revenue neutral rate.
Okay.
We would still be in a good position with our bond and interest fund. I had projected that we would be making payments on the fire station this year, but because that was delayed a bit or didn't get started as soon as we had thought, we won't have any payments in 23 for the fire station. So we're going to have a healthy fund balance in our bond and interest fund, but it's going to be very useful going into 24 after we've started bonding these projects. So I wouldn't recommend reducing it further, or else we'll have to increase it next year.
Okay.
And as a reminder, our reserve policy would dictate that we have around 6.
Just under 6, yes.
So are we going to be able to make up that difference? Or?
I believe if it's like any normal year,
Okay,
we will
yeah.
be at or
A
just
little
around
bit.
6 million at the end of
Okay,
23.
great. Thank you. Additional questions to Angela?
That 6.4, that was taking into account some of the ARPA funds.
Yes, we would use the remaining portion of the ARPA funds, our 50%, to fund Woody's seat. There would still be a portion that we would have to bond because it wouldn't cover the full mill and overlay cost.
And that includes the 5% of our 50% towards the Housing Commission.
I remembered that, yes. I
Okay.
subtracted that off of what we could use for Woody's seat.
All right.
And the $440,000 that the fire department was allocated. So I've accounted for that. Yes.
Okay, well, I would just reiterate Angela's offer and Gary's offer to continue dialogue with them if you have additional questions. So yeah, really appreciate that.
We will have a couple months if there's anything that needs changed to review that.
And that also provides the public ample opportunity to reach out to any of us or to city staff with their insights. So.
Let me just say, if I could, certainly we appreciate the work, the decisions the council has made. One of the going through a budget process like this is a lot of work, and I really appreciate the department heads and what they've done. Not only did they submit reasonable budgets, but we at one point asked them to take a look at that again, and some of them were able to cut a little bit out so we could maintain the revenue neutral that you had requested. The decisions to balance the money and the services is always difficult, and so I know the council has a difficult job, but the decisions you made have helped us to get where we are. And so we have put this together, and again, Angela has done the heavy lifting on this. She's done a great job. So if you do have any questions regarding the budget, we want to either meet with you individually, or we'll come back and have a session like this and go over anything that you would like to have. I hope that it's been a good experience for you going through this, and it's certainly been helpful to us to know the direction you have given us. So,
Yes, I would like to add that this has been a very smooth budgeting session, and I actually wanted to say that you've done a great job, and that I kind of like the approach of the fact that the department heads have already cut out a lot of
Yes.
this stuff, because in typical previous years, it's like a huge wish list that gets put on the council, and then we're trying to make decisions on where to cut these huge amounts out, and we're probably not the ones that would know the best like the department heads would.
yeah.
So I feel like coming and not having to sit down with the council and be like, all right, where do we shave off $5 million? Not having to do that this year was pleasant, and I've reviewed over the budget, and it actually looks like a pretty healthy budget. I don't know if that's because we did have some extra funding, so we were able to fund things a little bit better this time, but I just wanted to thank everybody and the work that they put into it, because I do actually believe, which I don't, it's a good budget this year. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, I was going to wait until council comments, but you said exactly what I was thinking. I had no idea what the process looked like, but it seemed pretty easy. As easy as it could be, we did give some direction, and I've talked to several of the department heads, and they've also said that it went fairly smooth, and I thank all of them for that, for working hard to try to help us not raise taxes. And Gary, thank you for what you've done. And
Hey.
thanks for how you said that, Sarah. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Gary, really appreciate your leadership on direction to the department heads to put a budget before us that would be a little bit easier to.
One last
work
comment I'd
with.
like to make is this. I thank my fellow council members for spending their nights sometimes here, evenings. I think that was a real way to do it, because at me, the first year I did the budget, they just give you the books and, whoa, look at all these numbers. But now we had communication between us. We had a chance to read it, and it was done really well this year, me being the second time doing it. So it was done really well.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's all we had. With that, we'll call the next item. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. Item 7, report of city officials.
Okay, let's start with you today, Steve.
As you always do.
Do I start with you all the time? Sometimes I start with Sarah.
Yeah.
No, just to add to what I had to say, we were here for a couple nights, and your city commissioners do work hard. They spend we don't get paid for all this, and it was a really good experience for me the second time around. And I hear a lot of comments from the residents that I visit. So when I hear good comments and I can explain the budget to them a little bit better than I did before, and that's a real good thing for me anyway. So if I can explain it because I went to meetings, that's a good thing. But I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, great. What about you, Greg?
Well, along those lines, not really along those lines, I would just like to thank city staff for working out in this heat. I've had to do some of that myself lately, and I don't like it. And I'm sure they don't either. And so I would just like to thank city staff for all their hard work, from the city manager on everybody. It takes a team to make this city run. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, what do you have, John?
Everyone's taken all my comments. I'm good.
Okay, what about you, Sarah?
Yes, I actually want to talk about keeping chickens
About
in
what?
the city.
Okay.
Like extra tasty crispy or original?
Like homegrown. No. So I've had some discussions with people about the keepings of chickens and so I have some comments about the fact that the average lot size in Hutchinson is about 6,000 square feet, and that would only allow for 3 chickens per lot. A lot of times when you go to Tractor Supply in some places, you have to buy at least 4 chickens. And so
Who knew there was a minimum requirement?
because they are social animals.
Okay.
So normally you would, with social animals, they like to be in a flock, right? So some places where you buy them don't allow you to buy like just one, because. And so I wanted to talk about that. I know that with right now, like I said, the average lot size is about 6,000 square feet in Hutchinson, up to 7,000 square feet. So people would only be permitted to have 3 chickens. I know there's people that have more chickens, but it depends on who your neighbor is. And so I was hoping that we could talk about increasing the amount of chickens that we have, that a person can have, so that it's fair and equitable across the board, no matter if you have a nosy neighbor or not, So I know that someone also brought this up, that with the food shortages and stuff that's going on, a lot of people are trying to do more of the gardening and kind of homesteading projects. Cost of eggs are going to be on the rise. And allowing for more chickens, you could have meat chickens and egg-laying chickens that somebody could have. And that's what somebody had brought up, is the ability to have meat chickens where you rotate every 16 weeks. And then your egg-laying chickens that typically last 7 to 10 years. So I looked at some of the outside. So Lawrence has 12 to 20 chickens depending on plot size. So their minimum, how we have 3, theirs is 12. Some places like Manhattan have no minimum. Topeka has no maximum number, and they allow roosters. We currently
Oh my goodness.
don't allow roosters.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Then we have some other places that don't have a limit on number of plots, as long as they're over 2 acres. And roosters allowed, so if they're over 2 acres, they can have roosters if it's over 2 acres. And then there's other places that are close to us, which is like up to 10 hens, depending on plot size, and then permitting required. Like that would be Clay Center. So we don't have permitting, but I was hoping that we could actually have a discussion on this, have an agenda item to talk about having the ability, if like having an ordinance change to where you can have 12 chickens up to a certain size. If you own more than 2 acres, maybe you could have up to 50 chickens with a permit.
This don't add no rooster, does it, to wake you up in the morning?
No, we're only
Okay.
talking chickens.
Okay.
I honestly have zero
will-
expertise on this matter and will defer to your research and city staff. If council wants an agenda
Yes.
item to
Yeah.
discuss it, I'm fine with that.
I think
Anybody
it
else?
needs to go through planning and zoning first for recommendation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's
Why don't we direct staff to do that then?
We just talked about this a few weeks ago. We could have discussed it then.
I was talking about community gardens.
Oh, community garden. I thought we were still talking
Yeah.
about chickens.
I'm talking about chickens now.
Okay. No, we talked about the city ordinance that requires a certain size cow if you live in the city. If you have a smaller lot, you have to have a smaller cow, and for horses or, remember when chickens
Yes,
came up?
yes, that was back in February. But now it's summer and people are asking questions. And so
Okay.
now I'm researching and maybe we need to talk about it.
Okay,
I don't
great.
think there was
Oh, no,
as much as a discussion on
there
it.
would be any problem. And
So,
Gary, do you mind remanding that request to the planning department?
and
I
have
would be
them,
glad to. That would be the appropriate place, and I'd be glad to do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
before it goes to the planning department,
Mhm.
that way they don't do a lot of work. Would the council have an appetite for 10 or 12 chickens? Or do you guys feel like that's?
I need to know, I need to learn more about it.
Yeah, I honestly.
Because we don't want them to come
don't
back and be
know.
like, you can have 5 chickens.
Right.
Like, could they
Yeah.
come back with?
Well, I think they should benchmark with comparable communities like you've done.
Mhm.
And I mean, if there are communities our size that, you know, and we're way off base, then, you know, I don't have a strong feeling. But if they do have a meeting, a planning commission meeting about this particular item, it might be helpful for you to either submit what
Mhm.
you've put together or
Yeah.
attend. I know those are kind
Okay.
of like a weird time, like at 4 o'clock, so if that doesn't work, but
I think they're at 5:30
are they at 5:30?
Okay.
Okay.
on the opposite Tuesdays of this meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
Mayor, I got one thought. If I forgot about this, I shouldn't have forgot about this. I went to Juneteenth celebration this weekend. It was great. Did a good job. And I just want to commend them for the job they did. Other than me being out in the sun, I mean, but it was a really nice celebration. Make sure they know that. So.
Yeah, fantastic.
Great.
Sarah, did you have a few other items?
No, I just wanted to talk about chickens.
Okay. Okay, well, the only item I really wanted to cover, besides reiterating appreciation for everyone who put time into Juneteenth and other events this weekend, was to ask about where the appointments process discussion stands. I know Dave Sotelo is out for a while, but would just like to remind staff that that is a priority because some of these positions are going unfilled.
I can answer that, Mayor,
Perfect.
because I'm the one working on it.
Okay.
We have reviewed the various bodies and their terms. We are running down, some of these are by ordinance, some of the organizations, commissions, boards, some are by resolution, and we're currently running down the other bylaws of these organizations so we can determine where all the changes need to be made.
Okay.
And I can tell you I've reviewed those, and I plan to make the terms go from January 1 so that they're on the calendar year, because several of those boards and commissions already have those terms. So it'd be the least disruptive, and that's what we're hoping for. And then there will be some of those that will be singled out because they're not truly a city board or commission. They're organizations that we appoint people to, but it's not actually ours. So not proposing changes to those. But we hope to get back to you with that before long.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Gary.
Thank you. I want to just give you a quick update on the city manager search. We have signed a contract with Virchow Kraus, a firm that I think we had talked with you about at one point, and they provided some information. We're looking for a time frame, them to give a proposed time frame, and once we get that, I was hoping to have that today. We'll get that back to you. We want to move this process along, so we'll be reporting back to you in the near future. I did want to, there's been quite a few people in the community comment about the bikeway or the bike lane that's being constructed around 17th and Washington. And I'd like to ask Jeff Peterson to go to the podium and maybe talk a little bit about what's going on with that project right now and maybe how we got to where we are and how that's supposed to function.
Okay, very good. Jeff Peterson, Director of Engineering. The bicycle boulevard from 17th to 27th was initially started through the pedestrian and bicycle master plan, and then the city submitted for and received a grant, which is an 80-20% grant, where the city pays for 20% of the improvements. The state or federal grant is 80% of the improvements. When we started with this, and it's been a long process, so these things have come up over a number of years. The options were developed by a consultant that the city had hired. We did have a public meeting in plus or minus around 2018. Now it was 2018, middle of 2018, that had comments on what the proposed improvements were, which included the island or the refuge island on 17th, as well as a couple of traffic circles that are going to be placed along that route. The council was presented with those items, and at that time they approved the locations and the items that were going to be included in the project. In thinking about the bicycle boulevard, I believe some of the conversations discussed, well, if we're going to actually make it a bicycle boulevard, we should go through with adding the refuge island on 17th, since that's a pretty busy thoroughfare at that point. So that's how that was directed. At this point, they're in the process of building the refuge island, as well as replacing bad curb and gutter going north on Washington Street between 17th and 19th at this point. Once we get those things taken care of, then there'll be a mill and overlay, well, not a mill, just an overlay on from 17th to 19th on the brick areas, which the bricks between 18th and 19th on Washington Avenue have been an item of contention for a number of years because they're in very bad shape. So that ends up smoothing that. And there's some other treatments going north from as we get out of the Hyde Park area going north to 27th. There's coating on the asphalt to protect the coating, as well as make it good for striping and those types of things, and adding the signage for the bicycle boulevard. So do you guys have any general questions or that concerning this project going forward? I know there's been opinions on both sides of this as going forward when this was being developed. So I do know that Washington Street's a pretty low volume street, and we did during the public meeting we did have people on both sides of the discussion going through this too. So,
any questions?
No. Any anticipation of when it's going to be completed?
Well, it has to be complete before the state fair, of course. So I don't have a good. They were hoping to be done in 2 months, plus or minus 60 days, but it's going to depend on weather and some other things going forward. So,
was there some pooling during heavy rains in that area, or are we fixing? I think part of it was stormwater drainage.
Actually, during the design portion, we had televised the storm box that goes down from 18th to 19th, and there was a portion that was impacted by a couple of very large trees that have since been just removed with this project. So there's a repair to the storm box as we do this too. So, and as well as the addition of ADA ramps on some of the intersections that had non-conforming ADA ramps. So.
Well, thanks for the update, Jeff.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
John. I believe that's all I have, unless council members have any questions.
Are there further questions or motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn?
I would second that.
Please call the roll.
Garza,
Yes.
Bass,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Hurst, Farmer.
Yes.
Oh, you can keep it on that side.
Nope.